How 5,000 Nazi war criminals escaped to paradise. Picture this. World War II has just ended. Hitler is dead. The Nazi regime has collapsed. Justice tribunals are hunting down war criminals across Europe. But in a luxurious resort town nestled in the Argentine mountains, former SS officers are sipping wine on lakeside terraces, their stolen Jewish gold safely deposited in Swiss bank accounts. They're not hiding in shame. They're living like kings. This isn't fiction. This is one of the most shocking cover-ups in modern history. After the deadliest war in human history, after the systematic murder of 6 million Jews, after 55 million people died fighting fascism, thousands of the worst Nazi war criminals simply vanished into thin air. And most of them ended up in one place, Argentina. How did the architects of genocide escape justice? How did mass murderers transform into respectable businessmen? And why did an entire country roll out the red carpet for history's most wanted men? Today, I'm going to reveal the incredible true story of the Nazi Rattlins, a secret network that smuggled evil across the world and changed history forever. But first, let me show you just how badly the world failed at delivering justice after World War II. When the war ended in 1945, Allied forces faced an overwhelming task. They needed to identify and prosecute the people responsible for the Holocaust, the systematic extermination of Jews, Roma, disabled people, and political prisoners. They needed to hunt down the officers who had run concentration camps, the bureaucrats who had organized deportations, the doctors who had conducted horrific medical experiments. The numbers are staggering. Historians estimate that about 1 million Nazis were directly involved in war crimes and crimes against humanity. 1 million people who had participated in or facilitated genocide on an industrial scale. So how many were brought to justice? Fewer than 200,000 were ever indicted. Of those, only about 20,000 were actually convicted. And here's the most shocking part. Fewer than 600 served prison sentences longer than 3 years. Think about that for a moment. Out of 1 million Nazi war criminals, fewer than 600 received meaningful punishment. That's a conviction rate of less than 1%. It's one of the greatest failures of justice in human history. But where did all the others go? How do you hide 1 million war criminals? The answer lies in a secret network of escape routes that historians call the Rattlins. These weren't random individual escapes. This was an organized, international conspiracy involving governments, churches, and intelligence agencies that helped Nazi war criminals disappear into new lives across the globe. And the most popular destination wasn't some remote jungle hideout or underground bunker. It was Argentina, one of the most prosperous and beautiful countries in the world. Why Argentina? The answer reveals a calculated strategy that was both brilliant and utterly horrifying. First, distance meant safety. Argentina was 8,000 miles from Europe, far beyond the reach of Soviet, British, or French investigators. South American countries hadn't been major combatants in World War II, so they were relatively indifferent to European war crimes. The continent's vast geography, with its jungles, deserts, and remote mountain regions, made fugitives nearly impossible to track down. But distance alone wasn't enough. Nazis also needed to blend in, and Argentina offered something that Africa or Asia couldn't: a large white European population. Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Chile were seen as extensions of European civilization, places where German accents and Aryan features wouldn't attract unwanted attention. More importantly, Argentina was incredibly wealthy. In the early 20th century, Argentina was one of the richest countries in the world, more prosperous than most European nations. This wasn't some desperate refuge for criminals. This was an upgrade to a better life. But the most crucial factor was the existing German diaspora. Hundreds of thousands of ethnic Germans had already settled in Argentina after World War I, creating established communities that could welcome, protect, and employ Nazi fugitives. These weren't just random immigrants. Many were Nazi sympathizers who had maintained their political beliefs even after Germany's defeat. The escape network that made this possible was a masterpiece of criminal organization. At its center was the Argentine government itself, led by President Juan Perón, who actively assisted Nazi war criminals. Perón wasn't subtle about his admiration for fascism. He had been a military attaché in Mussolini's Italy and had studied Nazi military tactics. After the war, he believed that experienced Nazi officers and scientists could help Argentina build a powerful military and advanced industrial economy. But Perón couldn't smuggle Nazis directly. He needed help, and he found willing partners in two of the most respected institutions in the Western world: the Catholic Church and the International Red Cross. Certain bishops and cardinals, particularly in Italy and Spain, issued fake identification documents and passports to Nazi war criminals. The International Red Cross, under the pretense of helping displaced persons, provided travel documents that allowed fugitives to move freely across borders. With these legitimate-looking papers, Nazis could travel safely to Spain or Italy, then board passenger ships bound for Buenos Aires. They weren't sneaking across borders in the dead of night. They were traveling in comfort on luxury ocean liners, often using their real names or barely disguised aliases. The scale of this operation was enormous. Historians estimate that around 5,000 Nazi war criminals ended up in Argentina, including some of the most notorious figures in Holocaust history. Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the final solution who organized the deportation of millions of Jews to death camps, lived comfortably in Buenos Aires for 15 years before Israeli agents finally captured him in 1960. Joseph Mengele, the Auschwitz doctor who conducted horrific medical experiments on prisoners, including children, spent decades in Argentina before eventually moving to Brazil, where he died peacefully in 1979, never having faced trial. Heinrich Müller, the head of the Gestapo who oversaw the Nazi police state's most brutal operations, disappeared completely and is believed to have lived out his life in Argentina under a false identity. These weren't low-level collaborators trying to escape punishment. These were the masterminds of genocide, living freely in one of the world's most beautiful countries. And they weren't living in poverty or hiding in shame. Many Nazis used wealth looted from Jewish victims, often laundered through Swiss bank accounts, to fund luxurious new lives in Argentina. They invested in industries, bought large estates, and even supported neo-Nazi political movements. Many settled in Bariloche, a stunning resort town in the Argentine mountains that looks like it was transplanted from the Swiss Alps. Some didn't even bother changing their names, living openly in communities where their past was not only known, but respected. The German-Argentine community provided perfect cover. Towns like Villa General Belgrano were founded by German immigrants and maintained strong cultural ties to the homeland. Speaking German, celebrating German festivals, and maintaining German customs wasn't suspicious. It was expected. But Argentina wasn't the only destination for fleeing Nazis. The story gets even more shocking when you realize how many countries were willing to overlook war crimes for their own political or scientific advantage. Switzerland, which had maintained neutrality during the war, became the financial center of the Nazi escape network. Swiss banks not only laundered stolen Jewish gold, but also provided the financial infrastructure that allowed war criminals to transfer their wealth safely to South America. Spain under Francisco Franco, another fascist dictator, provided safe passage for Nazis traveling to South America. Franco saw Nazi refugees as natural allies against the communist threat he feared from the Soviet Union. Arab countries including Egypt and Syria welcomed over 4,000 Nazi war criminals, seeing them as valuable allies against Britain and the newly created State of Israel. Many Nazis found new careers training Arab armies, intelligence services, and secret police forces. But perhaps the most shocking revelation is that even the United States and Soviet Union, the supposed champions of anti-fascism, secretly recruited Nazi scientists and intelligence officers for their own purposes. The Soviet Union ran Operation Osovyakim, forcibly relocating 2,200 German scientists and engineers to work on weapons programs. The United States conducted Operation Paperclip, secretly bringing 1,600 German scientists to America, including Wernher von Braun, who had used slave labor to build V-2 rockets, but later became the father of NASA's space. Both superpowers decided that Nazi expertise was more valuable than Nazi punishment. Cold War competition took precedence over war crimes justice. So why did this massive failure of justice happen? How did the world allow thousands of war criminals to escape punishment and live comfortable lives? The answer reveals uncomfortable truths about post-war priorities. By 1947, the wartime alliance between the United States, Britain, and Soviet Union had collapsed into the Cold War. Former enemies became useful allies. Former allies became new threats. Countries that had harbored Nazi sympathies during the war, like Argentina and Spain, suddenly became valuable partners in the fight against communism. Nazi intelligence officers who had fought the Soviets were seen as experienced anti-communist assets. Nazi scientists who had developed advanced weapons were viewed as crucial for national security. Justice for Holocaust victims became secondary to geopolitical advantage. The hunt for war criminals was quietly abandoned in favor of recruiting useful criminals. The German-Argentine communities that welcomed Nazi fugitives weren't acting in isolation. They were part of a global network of fascist sympathizers who had never truly accepted Germany's defeat. In Argentina and Brazil, local Nazi parties had attracted tens of thousands of members during the war. Brazil's Nazi party had 40,000 members at its peak, making it the largest Nazi organization outside Germany itself. These communities provided not just shelter but active support for fugitive war criminals. They offered jobs, housing, false identities, and protection from law enforcement. Many genuinely believed that the Nazis had been fighting a righteous war against Jewish communist conspiracies. The Catholic Church's involvement was particularly shocking because it contradicted the institution's public opposition to Nazi persecution of Christians. That certain church officials, particularly those who shared Nazi anti-communist views, saw helping fugitives as a Christian duty to provide sanctuary. The International Red Cross justified its actions as humanitarian assistance to displaced persons, but internal documents later revealed that officials knew they were helping war criminals escape justice. Meanwhile, the victims of Nazi crimes and their families received little help or compensation. Jewish survivors struggled to reclaim property that had been stolen. Roma communities faced continued persecution. Disabled people who had survived Nazi euthanasia programs received no recognition or support. The contrast is stark and morally devastating. War criminals lived in luxury while their victims lived in poverty and trauma. The long-term consequences of this failure continue to shape our world today. Holocaust denial and neo-Nazi movements were nurtured by communities of unrepentant war criminals who spent decades spreading their ideology. Anti-Semitic conspiracy theories were refined and spread by Nazis who had escaped punishment. The precedent of letting war criminals escape justice, because of political expediency, has been repeated in conflicts around the world. From Cambodia to Rwanda to Syria, the international community has repeatedly chosen political stability over accountability for mass atrocities. But the story also reveals the power of individual courage and determination. Israeli intelligence agents who tracked down Adolf Eichmann, Nazi hunters like Simon Wiesenthal, who spent their lives pursuing justice, and journalists who exposed the Ratlins all showed that some people refused to accept that evil should go unpunished. Their efforts led to belated trials of Nazi war criminals, the establishment of Holocaust memorials and education programs, and international laws designed to prevent future genocides. The escape of Nazi war criminals to Argentina represents one of history's greatest failures of justice, but it also teaches us crucial lessons about the price of political expediency and the importance of moral courage. When we choose short-term advantage over long-term justice, when we decide that useful criminals are more valuable than their victims, when we allow evil to hide behind respectability, we don't just fail the past, we endanger the future. The next time you hear about war crimes or crimes against humanity, remember the story of the Nazi Ratlins. Remember that justice delayed is often justice denied. Remember that the price of looking the other way is measured not just in the comfort of criminals, but in the suffering of their victims and the encouragement of future atrocities. The Nazis who escaped to Argentina may be dead now, but the lessons of their escape remain urgently relevant. In a world where powerful people still commit terrible crimes and expect to escape consequences, the story of the Ratlins is both a warning and a call to action. History watchers, if this opened your eyes to one of the darkest cover-ups ever, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. What shocked you most about this story? Let me know in the comments below.